Hi, everyone. Um, Welcome everyone to the SpedNet webinar, Building Your Parent Toolkit, One Strategy at a Time with Solandy Forte. This is session 2, Boosting Independence. We are pleased to have you joining us. I'm Allie Schaefers, the tech consultant at SpedNet, and I'll be hosting this webinar. SpedNet was created over 25 years ago as a nonprofit to educate and empower parents of students with special needs to become their children's best advocates. In addition to the webinars and presentations, we have a terrific and easily accessible website with videos of all our presentations and webinars stored by topic and speaker, as well as related articles and materials. We have published an excellent interactive guide to special services, bringing knowledge to the table, how to be an effective advocate for your child, free on our website with paperbacks available for purchase. If you have a student in the Wilton Public Schools, you may receive a paper copy free of charge. Today, we welcome behavior analyst, clinical social worker, and autism specialist, Dr. Solandy Forte, founder and executive director of Solstice Behavioral Health and Consulting. Solandy will discuss strategies for boosting independence for your young child with special needs. Solandy has served hundreds of children and their families as a clinician, consultant, and advocate, has coordinated with multidisciplinary teams, and is dedicated to working with leaders in the field to diagnose and provide innovative and efficient treatment solutions. If you find our information and support helpful, please feel free to donate to SpedNet. We are a nonprofit organization. Your donations go directly into programming. A couple of ground rules. Be mindful this is an open forum and the presentation is being recorded, so we cannot guarantee confidentiality. You may not want to reveal any private information in your question. Solandy's 2 webinar videos will be sent out to all of you by email tomorrow and posted on our website and YouTube channel. Solandy will take questions during her talk as well as after. Please type your questions into the Q&A, not the chat. Any information provided in the presentations for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be legal or therapeutic advice. Lastly, this webinar is presented in partnership with Wilton Public Schools and the Newtown SPED PTA. So thanks, Solandy, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here a second time, 2 weeks in a row, just to sort of kick us off. Last week, I had presented on a topic that sometimes is a little hard to swallow if it's the first time you're hearing it. So I'm hoping that today's a little lighter, but it also builds upon what we learned at our last session. So it's definitely going to build upon that, because one of the things that we want to do is we want to promote independence of our students and children and the people that we serve on a day-to-day basis. So I do encourage you to submit questions and comments and feedback. If you need anything clarified, please don't hesitate to just ask. Will you also help me monitor the chat?
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the Q&A, I guess.
Good, because I tend to ramble on. Okay. So I want to talk about promoting independence at a very early age. You know, I work with a lot of students and children that over the years end up becoming pretty prompt dependent. And when we know that there are many times, and it is the case, that they're able to perform those skills independently, but we tend to sort of get into a routine, get into a groove, and we forget to remove those prompts that we used initially to teach the skill, because prompts are important, right? Showing someone, teaching someone, helping them physically, verbally, all those things are important in the learning process. But what's even more important is making sure that we're pulling those prompts away as quickly as we can. So I'll talk to you throughout as to how to do this. And I know that we have just about an hour to chat, so I'm going to get right to it. I do want to review the principles of ABA because I think that those are important. I want to discuss how to embed prompts. I want to go over the prompt hierarchy because not everybody knows what prompts can be used. And a little bit about each prompt, which ones are easier to fade, which ones are harder to fade, and which are my sort of go-to prompts when I'm working to build independence, especially when I'm teaching adaptive skills, right? Because we want our kids to be as independent as possible with respect to their functional daily living skills. Yeah, so let's get to it. Let's talk about these things. So what is ABA? ABA is not a one size fits all approach. There are tons of different strategies. This isn't even an exhaustive list that I'm about to put up here. There is discrete trial instruction or discrete trial training. There's natural environment training. There's embedded instruction, verbal behavior, pivotal response training, PBIS, behavioral skills training, story-based interventions, functional communication, precision teaching, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So these are the most common, I would say, approaches that fall under ABA. And I'll sort of give you a little bit of a flavor as to what each of these are. The first one is called discrete trial instruction or discrete trial training. And this is where we set up the environment in a way that the child is, we remove extraneous variables. So we remove anything on the desk or on the table or in the environment that's going to distract the child, okay? And then we place the items on, or the materials, the curriculum on the table or on the floor or on the surface. And we run through trials. We repeat teaching opportunities so that the child gets exposed to that repetition over and over again, but not in a way where you'd want to smack someone. Right? So not ad nauseum. We want to do it enough times where it's like, all right, I've presented it twice. I've presented it 3 times. Are they more independent the 3rd time? Did they need less prompting the 3rd time? And I'm like, all right, now I'm going to pull away and do something different. Okay. Some kids need us to quickly run these trials 5 times and then move on to and come back to it. Some kids respond to just one trial. It's like, give it to me once, and that's all about I can handle, and then do something different and come back. So discrete trial training is basically repetition, okay? Providing a child a setup or an environment where they're able to quickly learn through repeated practice, okay? Now, natural environment training is very closely aligned with incidental teaching, okay? It's an opportunity where for the adult to look around the environment and say, okay, how can I teach a skill within the natural environment, but in its most natural form, okay? So maybe I'm walking down the hallway. I'll give you a real example. I was just making one up. So at the clinic, at Solstice Clinic, we have murals all around that were painted specifically to stimulate and to make our learning environment rich. So down one of the little hallways that we have kids, a mural of kids jumping on stones. And we have butterflies up, and we have, some of the girls dressed, in different outfits, and some of the boys dressed in different outfits. And so we have different details. Some of them have brown eyes, some of them have blue eyes, some of them have darker skin, some of them have lighter skin, some of, just tons and tons of detail. Then we have grass, and we have caterpillars on the grass, and we have snails on the grass, and we have, birds in the sky. Okay. So in order for me to take an opportunity to do natural environment training, I may be walking down that hallway and I'll look at the child and say, oh, look, the butterfly. Oh my goodness, it's a butterfly. What color is it? And the child looks at it and says, purple. And I say, that's right, it's purple, right? So I took that opportunity to teach that child the color, right, in the most natural environment. Now, if they didn't answer purple, I would say, oh, okay, it's purple. And the child would say, may or may not say purple. Okay. And then I would move on to the next one, right? What color is this butterfly? Yellow. The child repeats yellow, right? So it's sort of a cross between, I tend to say, right, discrete trial training in the natural environment, but really taking all those opportunities to teach. Another approach is behavioral skills training, and that's where we are training folks through providing them a rationale as to what it is they're about to do, right? So telling them what they're going to do, showing them how to do it, asking them to do it for us, and then giving them feedback. Okay, so feedback could be reinforcement, positive reinforcement. Feedback can be an error correction, right? Feedback can be constructive criticism. Okay, like, okay, now I would like you to do it a little bit different, like this way. Okay, just to perfect a skill a little bit, right, and get it right. So, and then you do it all over again, right? So I'm going to tell you how to do it, then I'm going to show you how to do it, then you're going to show me how you do it, right, after my model, and then I'm going to give you feedback, and then you do it again. Okay, but it is something that we use not just with kids, but mostly our adult population, because they may have already acquired those imitation skills and have a greater knowledge or exposure to learning opportunities. Let's see. Functional communication training. Functional communication training is basically an approach that reinforces the heck out of you saying that you're requesting, you're manding, you're commenting, you basically are using your words, your AAC device, your pictures, your icons, any way to communicate, right? Functionally. And we tend to use or teach functional communication training when we have kids that are engaging in maladaptive behavior, because that's the only way they've learned to access their needs and their desires. Okay, so I tend to gravitate and say, okay, we're going to teach this kid how to functionally communicate. I'm going to reduce the response effort. Last week I talked about response effort, right? Making it super easy for you to ask for something or learn a skill. Okay, so that engaging in the maladaptive behavior is not even worth it anymore. Okay, if you need further clarification on what I mean by reducing response effort or decreasing response effort, listen to last week's presentation on strategies for managing and preventing challenging behavior. So that's functional communication training. Story-based interventions are what sometimes folks refer to as social stories, but they're different. Okay, they're not social stories. We don't claim that they are social stories because they're not. Story-based interventions are more aligned with sort of the approach of stating what the expectations are clearly, or what is about to happen in your day or in your life that may be a change in a routine or a schedule. Okay, so we're going to walk you through what that is going to entail, and then we're going to state what the expectations are during those times. Okay. Oh, and precision teaching. Look, that one popped up. Oops. Okay. All right. So super important principles of applied behavior analysis. The first one is reinforcement. It occurs when a stimulus change immediately follows a response and increases the future frequency of that type of behavior in similar conditions. Basically, what this is saying is, if you provide reinforcement and that person interprets your reinforcement as reinforcement, it is a reinforcer. Okay, you will see more of that behavior in the future. Okay, so you reinforce and you will probably get more of what they did. Okay, so for example, the child, oh, this was beautiful. I saw this yesterday and I was so excited. Child was on a swing. He has only had his AAC device for like a month. He hits the button of push me on the swing, right? He says, push me, right? And we go and we push him, right? So we're like so excited because we're like, oh my gosh, he just said, push me on the swing, right? So push me. He touches it. We immediately start pushing him on the swing. Okay. The swing sort of starts to die down. He hits push me. We push again, right? So now we have this kid that is just like, push me, push me, push me, push me. What did we do? We provided reinforcement. He saw it, right? The response is reinforcing. I'm now going to do this behavior even more. Push me, push me, push me, push me, push me, right? On the swing, by the way. Punishment. Now, punishment does the opposite. Okay. If a behavior occurs and a stimulus is presented, so like an action or a thing or a response is presented in response to that behavior, and it's not something that's very pleasing, right? So it's something that's kind of aversive. It may be somebody scolding someone. It may be putting in place some kind of punishment procedure, you know, like, oh, because you destroyed the room, let's say, and messed it up, destroyed the room. Now you got to clean it up. Okay. It's probably going to decrease the future of that behavior happening again. I may not destroy the room again if it means I've got to clean it up. Okay. So that's what punishment is. Stimulus control. You need to know what stimulus control. I talked about it last week. Okay. But it's a situation in which the frequency, latency, duration, or amplitude of the behavior, so intensity of the behavior, is altered by the presence or absence of an antecedent stimulus, right? So something in my environment comes upon me and I react in a certain way. Okay. People tend to say that when kids see me coming into the room, they stop misbehaving. Okay. And I am not a punisher. I avoid punishment like the plague. I do not like using punishment procedures. I weigh heavily and lean heavily on reinforcement procedures. Okay. So when kids see me coming into the room, they know they have to be in their best behavior in order to get my reinforcement. Okay. So I come in with my tickles. I come in with my smiles. I come in with my thumbs up. I come in with skills, right? I come in with all sorts of fun, right? I pick them up, throw them up in the air, you know, and they know that, oh, wait, if I'm engaging in maladapt behavior, Dr. Forte, she's not going to give me what I want, right? She's not going to give me those tickles and those snuggles, and she's not going to have, you know, chase me, you know, right around the classroom when I perform well. So, you know, I tend to say, yes, I do have stimulus control over everyone. No. That's just not reality, right? But after a while, when you've established a relationship with a child, sure, you have stimulus control. Okay. Now, extinction. And then I'm going to tell you what this has to do with independence, by the way. So extinction is discontinuing of reinforcement of a previously reinforced behavior. So results in a decrease in the behavior. Okay. What does all of this have to do, especially extinction with independence? Well, guess what? If I was previously reinforcing a behavior, you doing your laundry with tons of verbal prompts, tons of physical prompts, but now I'm like, I think I'm going to start to decrease my prompts. Okay. And the child or the adult is just sitting there now and waiting for a prompt. And I'm going to now extinguish and say, I'm not providing that prompt anymore, right? Now, in order for you to get my reinforcement, you have to do a portion of that, if not all of it, on your own. Okay. And then I'll reinforce the new behavior. The new behavior is the increase of independence. What does that have to do with reinforcement? I just said it, right? Now I'm reinforcing new behavior that occurred with the prompt. Okay. That's why this is important. Okay. Stimulus control is also important, right? Some kids, oof, listen to this one. They're at school, they put on their shoes, not an issue, right? They're at home, they hand the shoe to the parent to put on. And, I walk in, I'm going, wait a minute, what's going on here? Okay. So there's stimulus control. The child sees the parent, they hand them the shoe to put it on, right? They see the occupational therapist and they put on their shoe all by themselves. Why? Because the OT has stimulus control, right? Over their behavior. Okay. Very, very quick, and then we'll go into some strategies. What is behavior? Basically anything you can see, anything you can observe. Okay. Overt behavior, covert behavior, jumping, laughing, thinking, you can't really see. Moving your tongue, you can't really see, right? But all of those things are behavior. Okay. We're going to look at how we can modify behavior so that someone can become more independent on their day-to-day activities. Now, this is super important because if we're going to look at increasing independence, we need to pay very careful attention to stimulus or stimuli. Okay. I have to figure out, how can I identify stimuli in someone's environment so that those things can be a natural prompt for them, rather than who, rather than me, rather than you. Okay. So I'm going to look around the environment and say, what are smells, sounds, visuals, objects, people, places, etc., that will prompt the individual to perform a task or a skill independently or more independently. Okay. This is super important because, for example, a sound that is a audible, right, cue for us to know that the oven is ready is by it going beep, 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 right? And then it's like, oh, okay, now it's ready for me to put in the oven, my food in the oven to cook, because now it's preheated. Okay. Well, those are the types of things that, right? That's an automatic response for us now, isn't it? Right? Is it, or is it not? Right? It's kind of not. We have been trained, right? The sound of the beep, 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 beep on the oven evokes our behavior of now placing the food in the oven. Okay. So that's what we want to do to promote independence at a very, very early age. We want to look for visuals. We want to look for sounds. We want to look for cues in the natural environment so that our kids are responding to that and not to us telling them what to do all day. Okay. The worst is someone who their whole lives have heard in the bathroom, let's say, right? All right, go to the toilet, pull down your pants. Okay, pull down your underwear, sit on the toilet. Okay, go pee-pee, go pee-pee. Come on, go pee-pee, go pee-pee. Okay, good job. Okay, now wipe. No, take the paper. Okay, now scrunch it up, right? We don't want that. We don't, because that's not them being independent, right? That's not functional. So what I do is I think of different solutions, right? So different visuals that I can use, sounds, like maybe a timer, like you just have to sit on the toilet for 2 minutes. That's it, right? And timer goes off, they go off, the timer goes off. They're like, oh, now I have to wipe. Okay. So think about the different stimuli that you could probably use in your environment. So for example, here are some visual schedules, right? Visual schedules are critical when working with children with special needs. Critical. They don't have to look like this. They don't have to have icons and photos and pictures. They can just simply be words. Okay. They can even have tactile, right, stimuli attached to them. Okay. I think last week I may have talked to you all about a child who had autism and also was blind, and I had to use tactile paired with sound. Okay. As cues embedded in his environment so that he knew what was coming up next. Otherwise, he was living a life having tantrums all day long because he didn't know, right? We had to make his unfamiliar environment familiar. How did we do that? By using the stimuli in his environment to communicate. So if you see the one that's on the right here by the ottoolbox.com, I like this actually website. This one I like because it's kind of neat. It blocks all the ones or covers all the ones that have not been done. And all the adult has to do is sort of flip the next one, or the child can flip the next one, the next step after they've completed it. Because sometimes seeing all those steps in front of them could be a bit overwhelming. Like, I don't know what this means, and I don't know what you mean by like what the next step is. Okay. So I like this because it sort of like covers it up and then it opens up and there you go. It could be as simple as that. My other favorite site that I go to is 33 Visual Schedules. These are free, okay? They're intended for home and daily routines, and they're printable, okay? Love this site. I tend to use first then or first next then boards, especially with my early learners, because it is quick and dirty. It's like, first I need you to do that, then I need you to do that, and here it is in front of you. I always, from a very early age, pair all of my visuals with words all the time. Okay. Why? Because at some point, we can fade out those pictures and the child now is responding to words. So they can learn through exposure. Okay. So you see the one at the bottom, it says wash hands, turn on, soap. This is for washing hands. Wash hands, turn off, and dry hands. Sometimes our kids need more than just 5 steps broken down. Sometimes they need 7. Sometimes they need more specificity. Okay. All right. So I see a question. Can you please say the websites again? Sure. It's www.theottoolbox.com. There is, if you type into Google 33 Visual Schedules, that book or that website will come up. And first then, if you look up first then, that should come up as well. Okay, we're good. All right. All right, so now let's talk about least to most prompting. Oops, there we go. All right. So the reason I start to talk about this and first talk about least to most prompting is because if you go in full throttle on prompting, you will never know if the child is able to perform some of the steps to the routine or task independently. So you don't want to go full throttle with prompting. You want to take a step back and prompt the least amount with the least intrusive prompts that you have in your toolbox, okay? And the reason for this is because you're going to test and see what they're able to do independently. And now you know what steps they're able to do independently, so you never have to prompt at that level or at that step. And you then start to play around with the level of prompting for the other steps, okay? Maybe they need partial support with putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush. Maybe they need full hand over hand support with drying their hands. Okay, because it's more like when they dry their hands, right? And you're like, no, that's not drying your hands. You're gonna end up with like, clammy, nasty hands, or Maybe they need full physical prompting for getting all that soap off their hands, but not for turning on the water. Okay. So least to most prompting is where you start with the least amount of prompting and then you move up the hierarchy. And I'll talk about what the hierarchy looks like in a minute. Okay. But you move up that hierarchy until you're providing the most prompt that the child requires. It doesn't mean you go all the way up the chain or the hierarchy. It just means you move slowly up and then stop at which point the child is now doing it with your support. Okay. This approach is used also, and mostly always, with someone who's already prompt dependent. So if you have a child who's already prompt dependent, you got to do least to most prompting. Most to least prompting is when you have a child that is making a ton of errors, doesn't really understand or comprehend what it is exactly that they need to do. And really requires you to show him or her so that you can get the ball rolling on teaching the skill. So you're going to go in and provide the most intrusive prompt possible. Okay. You're going to go in for the hand over hand. You're going to go in for the full physical prompt. Okay. Before then you start to fade and go to least, right? So I may go in full hand over hand to teach a child how to tie their shoes. And then over time, I start to loosen my grip to see and only jump in to provide full, loosen the grip again, right? And then I take a step back. So that's most to least prompting. Again, for learners that are having a difficult time, right? And continue to make errors over and over again. You want to prevent those errors. Okay. So I promised that I would go through the prompt hierarchy. So in order for us to promote independence, right, we really need to know the different types of prompts. So I'm going to go from the most intrusive, and I'm going to describe how hard it is for us to actually fade these out. So full physical. Full physical prompt is basically you have your hands on the child, right, or on the person, and you're hand over hand prompting them or physically prompting them, manipulating their body in order to perform the step or the skill. Partial physical is when you may need to, it looks like you're providing full physical, but you're kind of loosening your grip a little bit, right? And the touch may be lighter. It may not be full physical prompting, but the touch of the physical prompt is lighter. It even feels lighter. It looks lighter. It looks like there's more distance between you and the person's body part. Okay. Full verbal is when you're explicitly telling the person what to do step by step. I kind of gave you an example of what that looks like in the bathroom. Full verbal prompts are probably the most difficult to fade. Why? Because what are you going to do? After you've done, okay, go to the bathroom, go to the toilet, pull down your pants, pull down your underwear, sit on the toilet. After I've done that for years, what am I now going to do? Go to the, pull down your, right? What am I going to start to do? Fade, partially verbal? Like, I'm not completing my sentences. So the child or the person's already dependent on that. How am I supposed to fade that? Okay. So technically what I do is I then say, okay, if he's now only responding because of your verbal prompts, I need to introduce a visual prompt or a textual prompt with the verbal prompt initially. And then once the child starts to respond to the visual prompts, right? Because I'm watching them responding, I'm associating and pairing my verbal with the visual. Then I start to close my mouth. I don't say it. Now I just point to the visual because they already know, they've already heard me say, okay, turn on the water, but I'm pointing at the picture, turn on the water, wet your hands. Now I'm going like this. Okay, so I'm fading my verbal prompts. That's a tool that I would say, if you have a child who's very prompt dependent on your verbal prompts, okay, you need to figure out a less intrusive, more functional, looks more naturalistic, like a visual textual or superimposed prompt that can be paired with that full verbal and start fading it after it's been paired or after it's been associated. Okay. Partial verbal is what I gave you an example of. So let's say the child is learning their name, Carly. Okay. And you've been providing full verbal this whole time. What's your name? And you say Carly, and they say Carly. Okay, what's your name? Carly. And then they say Carly. Okay, what's your name? Car. And then they say Carly. Right, good. What's your name? And then they say Carly. Right. What's your name? And then I don't provide any prompting and the child says Carly. Okay. So that's partial verbal is when I'm starting to fade, right? So I started with the full Carly, car, and then nothing. Okay. So that's partial verbal. Modeling is simply showing. Just show them what to do. Okay. If they have good imitation skills, then they'll imitate what they've just seen. If they don't have imitation skills, then I'm not going to rely heavily on this because then I have to really work on teaching them how to imitate so that they can learn from a model. I will say that if your child does not know how to imitate yet, that should be a priority because look how many prompt levels you can jump and go straight to modeling and be so much closer to visual, right? If they know how to imitate. If they don't know how to imitate, you're then likely going to have to start at full physical, partial physical, okay? Or full verbal, partial verbal. So teaching and prioritizing imitation, an imitation skill is ideal, okay? Should be done. So again, modeling is showing, I do, you do, okay? Gestural is basically like pointing. Sometimes kids know when I do this, like, I don't know. And then they're like, I think that's a prompt for me to actually do what is next on the step. Or maybe it's my eyebrows, like, I see that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, good job. Sometimes it may be sort of, I point over there or I open up my hand. It's sort of like a gesture, like, all right, it's time, keep going. That's a gestural prompt. Proximity. Proximity is really your distance, right, to someone. Believe me when I tell you, proximity is a prompt, okay? Kids become very dependent with someone being present in order for them to perform a task, okay? You may have a child who won't eat unless you are present, right? And that's just not functional. That's not being an independent eater, okay? That's not taking care of themselves, right? You may have a child that won't finish showering unless you are present the entire time, okay? And then we have visuals, textual, and superimposed prompts. Visual prompts, I showed you what some of those look like. Textual prompts are words, okay? And superimposed, a lot of people are like, what's superimposed? Superimposed prompt is a prompt that's embedded within something else, okay? Like a picture that is a cue for what it is that you want the response or what the correct response is. So superimpose, I'm going to give you an example. There was a show a long time ago. It was a cartoon when my kids were growing up that I cannot remember the name of. It just left my brain, but they had characters in this television series that were animals that actually were words shaped in the form of an animal. Okay, I can't remember what show that is, but basically it was like sheep, right? And there was like a sheep, and the words actually look like the sheep, or the car, and the word car was shaped like into a car, right? What is it?
Yeah, I just Googled it, word world.
Yes, it's word world. So those are superimposed prompts. And then what you do is you start fading the picture of the car. And what pops out now? The word car, right? So those are superimposed prompts. Is that they're sort of like part of, embedded in what it is that you're teaching. Okay, so, okay. Here are a couple tips that I want you to do. I kind of already touched upon this. I kind of want you to take a moment and be like, I'm going to just be hands off. I want to tell him to go to the bathroom. I want to tell him to make his bed. Well, don't do that one. That one always fails. I want to tell him to go to the bathroom. I want to tell her to shower. I'm going to ask her to brush her teeth, right? I'm going to ask him to try to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? That he absolutely loves. And I'm just going to be completely hands off. Why? Because I want to see what you're able to do, if anything, any step independently. Okay. I may even start you off and say, you know what? He didn't even get the bread, didn't know where the peanut butter, I may put that stuff out, even the knife. Okay. Or the butter knife. Okay. And I'm just going to be hands off. Go for it, dude. Okay. That is also an opportunity, right, to promote independence. Who knew that this kid can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? My goodness, I had no idea, right? But he was missing a couple steps. I'd like him to clean this, step up a little bit more, but you got information. Contrive situations, right? Contrive situations for them to practice. Sabotage the environment. Oh yeah. You may need to arrange the environment so that they have to actually perform a step or a skill independently in order to access what they want. So they may have to, what's a good one? They may have to look for the toothpaste if the toothpaste is not there. Okay. But I purposefully left the toothpaste out so that they had to go looking for it. That increases independence and increased proximity. Always back off. See how your distance and your proximity to the student or the child affects their independence level. Task analysis. This is also a tool that we use a ton. I go into every ABA program and there are task analyses everywhere. Okay. A task analysis is when you're breaking down a complex skill into smaller, more manageable steps. That's all it is. So for example, toothbrushing, I may break down the task analysis, visual task analysis, or written task analysis for toothbrushing as get toothpaste and toothbrush, wet toothpaste, put toothbrush on toothpaste, brush top teeth, bottom teeth, right side, left side, rinse toothbrush, rinse mouth, dry mouth, right? So basically what I've done is I've broken down the whole routine into small steps that are manageable for you to follow rather than like brush teeth. Like, what's that? I don't know how to do that in what order. And I've been dependent on you my entire life. So that is critical, is making sure that you use a task analysis, break those skills down into small, concrete steps. And then a couple sort of last things I want to say. I want to talk about generalization and maintenance and give you a couple tips here. You always want to make sure that you're promoting or planning is the word for generalization. You want to make sure that you teach across settings. You want to make sure that you teach across situations. You want to provide your child with opportunities to perform the skill in different contexts. Why? Because you don't want them to be so dependent on the way or in the environment or with a certain person that they're able to perform that skill. You want them to do it in all different situations, especially with our children who are on the autism spectrum. They tend to be very ritualistic and they won't do it under different circumstances. So we need to make sure that we plan for generalization, okay? Lastly, maintenance. It's really important for us to continue to practice in order to maintain the skills over time. If a child has learned a skill, you have to maintain it. Practice. For example, I mean, I'm a skier. I'm not the best skier. I honestly just picked up skiing again about 3 or 4 years ago. I don't ski from April through probably the beginning of January, mid-January. I don't ski. So the very first time I get on my skis, it's like starting all over again. Why? Because I didn't necessarily work on maintaining that skill and practicing it. Okay. So it's really important to practice and maintain the skills that the child has acquired. And provide a ton of reinforcement too. You don't want to just to practice, no, to reinforce it. Build upon the progress and increase independence, for sure, that will. Okay, and one very, very last thing, okay? I want you to always make sure when you're looking to increase independence that you're doing 4 different steps, okay? I want you to first stop and just observe. What's the child able to do on their own? What steps to the routine or this task is the child able to do on their own? Observe them first. Record, take notes, write it in your diary, right? Here's what the child was able to do. Here's where they are. Here's the prompting that was required per steps, right? Because you're going to forget. And then continue, come up with a plan. I'm going to prompt here. I'm not going to prompt there. I'm going to use this prompt. Okay, that's why it's important to record this information. And then evaluate, right? A week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 3 months from now. Is what I'm doing working? Evaluate it. And if it's not working, change what you're doing. Change the treatment, okay? Practice, and then reevaluate. Ask yourself, is what I am doing working? If it's not again, then change something about what you're doing and then reevaluate, okay? That's this process, and it's super important, okay? All right, any questions? I know that we have about 7 minutes left. Any questions about promoting independence, prompt hierarchies, decreasing response effort? I know sometimes I throw out stimulus control. I never know who my audience is going to be. It's like, are you a newbie to ABA or have you been in the, doing this for a while? So I want to make sure that it's something for everyone. All right.
Yeah, sometimes people need a minute to think through what they just heard. So
yeah. So my contact is listed here. It's sforte@solsticebhd.org. The office line is 203-900-4720. And again, I'm from Solstice Behavioral Health and Consulting. I'm the executive director and founder of Solstice. And I am a resource to you even after today's training. So it doesn't have to be right now that you ask the question if you're shy. I'm always a resource for our community. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. And I'm always happy to help. So don't ever hesitate to reach out because this is my passion. Okay. So I'm got into the helping field for a reason. Okay. All right. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. Oh, we have one. Yay. Okay. So hold on.
Two. Go ahead.
So what do you recommend for a child who constantly sprays the back wall and all around the toilet? Oh no, I have gone in the bathroom and helped him, but still forgets. I put different colored Cheerios in the like Fruit Loops in the a toilet. If Fruit Loops are not okay because they're going to like dive into the toilet and try to eat them afterwards, then there are, if you look on Google, there are little rings that you can put into the toilet and they can practice shooting into the toilet. And then while they're making it into the toilet, I'm also reinforcing them. So I'm giving them, you know, maybe I'm giving them tokens for like, oh God, you're peeing in the toilet. I'm giving them tokens. You get to have the iPad for 10 minutes after you just peed in the toilet. That's what I technically do. If it's persistent and something that is just like, oh my gosh, it's been going on forever, it's so hard to break, I'm having a really hard time, I may say, okay, we've tried reinforcement, we tried all these different things. You may have to have them participate in cleaning up the back wall and the floor, okay? While also reinforcing if they get it into the toilet, okay? So it's got to be both, like have reinforcement, and if you decide to pee on the back of the toilet, I mean on the wall, you're going to have to clean it up and help me, okay? Do you have any tips on potty training? I'm going to start in the summer for my 5-year-old. Yes, I do. I don't know your 5-year-old though. I don't know where her level of functioning is. So it's really hard to give you any very specific. Any advice? I'm going to be bold here. If you can, don't go to pull-ups. Go straight to underwear if you can. A must is isolating a reinforcer. Pick something in her life that is super important, even if it's food, okay? And that is going to be the reinforcer, the times where she voids in the toilet, okay? She cannot have this reinforcer or this item or this thing or this food any other time of the day. That's why it's an isolated reinforcer, because she needs to have this only and only when she voids in the toilet. Collect data to see when she's the most wet. So before you take those diapers off or those pull-ups off, figure out when she's wet the most during the day. Okay. So like, when is she like really, really wet? When is she dry? Because you're going to have to identify the frequency of the intervals, the time intervals of going to the bathroom. So your trip training, right? So I'm going to take her every 15 minutes, or I'm going to take her every half an hour. I'm going to take her every 45 minutes, hour. I mean, I've been to the bathroom every 5 minutes, you know, until I was able to fade that to longer periods of time. So isolated reinforcer, try to go to underwear if you can, jump over the pull-ups, figure out the trip schedule. And what else can I tell you? Make sure you have everything you need. Extra underwear, extra clothing, gloves, everything you're going to need to make it a smooth sort of cleanup. Okay. And work with your school team. Make sure they're doing what you're doing and you're doing what they're doing. Seek advice. There are experts who do toileting all the time. I have toileted when they have told me that they couldn't toilet a kid at 9 years old. I've gotten it done. At 16, I've gotten it done. So there are experts that can help out there. Okay. All right. Perfect timing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for presenting.
Absolutely. It was fun.
All right. Cool. I think, yeah, that everybody's had time to ask questions, so I think we're good here. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.
All right. Bye-bye.